Já bych se vám ráda představila, jmenuji se Barbora Geršlová a dnes jsem tady za Fresh Labels. Dneska jsme si pro vás připravili program a to přednášku na téma budoucnost udržitelné módy. Ale pro začátek bych se vás vlastně chtěla zeptat, co je udržitelná móda. Představte si, že třeba máte nějaké tričko a to se vám rozbije, udělají se v něm díry a vlastně už ztratilo svoji funkční hodnotu. Tak co se s ním dá udělat? To tričko samozřejmě se může vyhodit, což je ale ta špatná varianta. A představme si nějaký režim, že to tričko zasadíme do země a za pár měsíců nám z něj vyroste třeba nějaká zelenina. Tím pádem to tričko neskončí na skládce, ale místo toho se přirozeně rozloží v půdě a navíc z něj ještě vznikne něco nového. Právě takovýhle přístup k udržitelné módě praktikuje značka Houdini, kterou jsme se rozhodli pro dnešní večer pozvat. Houdini je naším největším úlovkem, naším nejnovějším a možná i největším úlovkem v oblasti udržitelné módy. A my jsme moc rádi, že přijel Axel Lindgren z Houdini, který nám dá vlastně přednášku na udržitelnou módu v podání Houdini. Kompostovatelné produkty od značky Houdini si můžete prohlédnout i v naší instalaci v Open Studio, kde máme i jiné značky, od kterých prezentujeme nějaké inovativní technologie v oblasti udržitelného průmyslu. A zároveň si můžete prohlédnout i naši druhou instalaci v Super Studiu, která je v tamhletom balkoně, který asi nevidíte, ale je tam nahoře v prvním patře. A tam si ty produkty můžete nejen prohlédnout, ale třeba i koupit. Tak a protože naším dorozumívacím prostředkem s Axelem je angličtina, tak já přejdu do angličtiny, aby věděl, co tu tak dlouho povídám. So now, Axel, I'm turning to English. I'll focus a bit more on explaining for those who might not have understood me earlier. But I promise now I'll speak English only. So if there's anyone who doesn't speak Czech, I'll introduce myself again. My name is Barbara, and today I'll represent Fresh Labels. Fresh Labels, for those who may not know, is a curated concept store that has been dealing with sustainability already for several years. We curate our brand selection based on criteria of design and quality, but also of sustainability. We decide whether the brands are sustainable or not based on meeting the conditions of use of environmentally friendly materials, safe and fair working conditions, and transparent supply chain. This week, we've launched our 33rd sustainable brand, which is, of course, Houdini. We are very happy about that because not only Houdini meets the criteria of sustainability, but it's also very nice and of a high quality. And what impresses us a lot is their circular approach towards fashion industry. I believe that circularity is a real key game changer within sustainable fashion, but also sustainable consumption. So I believe this lecture of Axel will be very inspirational for all of us. So Axel, thank you for coming, and it's all yours.
Thank you for inviting me. Can everybody hear me? Yes, okay, perfect. There's still some seats up in the front if anybody wants to. Just okay. Right, so I am going to talk about sustainability in the textile industry, basically, because right now the textile industry is at war with sustainability. An unintentional war in a lot of ways, but that's still how it is. And there's a lot of talk right now about circular economy, and what that basically means is to find ways to fit into nature, to mimic the way nature works. So I will talk about that, and I will talk about how we look at sustainability at Houdini. It works. Right, so just a quick check. How many people in here know about Houdini from before? 4. Okay, that's perfect, because then you don't know this already. But we are an outdoor brand, an independent outdoor brand based in Stockholm, Sweden. And to explain it very shortly, this is what we do when we are at the office, and this is what we do when we're not. We make garments for people that love to be in the outdoors. It's as simple as that, from the start at least. And when Houdini started, that was in '93, this is basically all we wanted to do. Not me, because I was 7, but Lotta, that started Houdini, she made garments for her friends, and they spent most of their time outdoors. But as the company grew, we realized that we had a problem. And that's apparel and footwear stands for 8% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. That's more than the air industry and the naval industry combined. 20% of water pollution comes from dyeing and treating of textiles. And the last 15 years, clothing production in the world has doubled. And if you look at it from the mid-70s, it's a 4 times increase. But we use the clothes more and more less. So today, people that live like us in the more developed parts of the world, an average garment is used 5 to 7 times before it's thrown away or left lying around somewhere. 5 to 7. I mean, it's insane. And recycling has become more trendy lately, which is, of course, a great thing, but it's still very few of the garments that are made in the world that become recycled. So, back to the story. If we want to spend time in the outdoors, if this is what we love, to be in nature, it doesn't really make sense to wreck it at the same time. Of course, sustainability is bigger. Climate change, loss of biodiversity is not about us not having clean beaches to surf. It's much bigger than that. But as a brand that sort of operates very closely to nature, it becomes just too obvious that we need to do something about it. So, before I explain what we do, I'm going to do a quick little rundown on how we ended up where we are right now. So the world's shortest history lesson in textile production. We start off in the Stone Age. People were wearing clothes. It's a little hard to see. They're also very flexible. Look at that guy there. But from the start, clothes was hard. It was hard to make. It took a lot of time, and it was very costly. So clothes became valuable. And as valuable, so even if we jump 10,000 years, clothes was one of the biggest ways or most easy way to show that you had money and power. And these guys, of course, didn't make their own clothes, but most people still did. Clothing production was something you did at home. There was no textile industry. But then if we jump another few hundred years, the Industrial Revolution. And I think we all read about this in history class, but textile industry was the first business that became industrialized. And it happened in England in the 18th century. Oh, well, never learned that. And what happened was that they came up with a bunch of new technology. They started digging up coal, and they started importing cotton from India in huge quantities. And as it turned out, this was very economically efficient. So it stuck. And then what happened actually for the first time was not just that the textile industry was born, but the linear industrial economy as we see it today was born. Where you took something here, you made something here, you used it over here, and then discarded it over here. And in the scale that it was never happened before. So that's what happened, and that's where we are now. Basically, most of the things we see around us works in a linear system. And so this is where we want to go, and this is where we have to go. And to show you a little bit about, or now let's see. This is where we need to start. We need to start to think about what we consume. And the word in itself is pretty interesting, because we actually consume very few things. Food, drinks maybe, but not the banana peels and not the beer bottles. And we definitely don't consume jeans or cell phones. We use them for a while, and then we throw them away. But the problem is that away doesn't exist. And this is another interesting word, because it says a lot about how we see waste in society. Because it's sort of, we have come up with this great system where we throw away things and they just disappear. But they don't. So we need to question this idea of just throwing away things. Right, so from linear to circular, that's the basic idea. And it's interesting because if you start looking at design from this standpoint, it's just a little too stupid to take things, make things, and then leave them over there. It doesn't work in the long run. I mean, it feels almost like too simple, but that's really how it is. There's a book called Cradle to Cradle that I can highly recommend. It's a classic sort of circular design literature. And in that book, they talk about these two words, efficient and effective. And a lot of the times when we talk about sustainability, we talk about efficiency. So we have a system or a product that is harmful in itself, and then we need to decrease the harm that the product makes. A car that runs on less gasoline, we need to fly less. We need to sort of decrease something harmful. But then maybe, what if we could make things that weren't harmful from the start? And the example in this book is the cherry tree. Because if you look at the cherry tree, it has an abundance of flowers. And it's only a few of those flowers that become cherries. And it's only a few of the cherries that become new plants. And of those plants, it's only a few that become new trees. So in a way, it's a system with a lot of waste. But at the same time, the waste decomposes and becomes nutrition for something else to grow. And that's the whole idea, that in nature, waste doesn't exist. Something that is waste from one organism is food for something else. And now I want to show you a short film about a project we did a few years ago. So now we need to switch presentations to show it, but let's see if it works.
This is a taste of the future, to be able to cook from things we recycle.
I think for Houdini, it's always been about creating something which is pure enough to have a continuous life.
When making this fabric, the process was quite long. It was several years actually, because we didn't want to compromise between the function and the aesthetics. So we mixed merino wool with other biodegradable fibers.
I have been composting since more than 40 years, but never textiles. It's important that you do not use material which contains toxic substances, because it can destroy the process and it makes the compost material unusable.
So to be able to make something biodegradable, we really question the base layers that we do and to make sure that they're pure enough. And by only putting naturals in there, which belongs in nature to start off with, we can also bring it back to nature.
The soil from the compost, you can use it as a perfect fertilizer, perfect soil improvement, and it makes your growing much more healthy than otherwise.
Houdini's clothes feels very down to earth and honest, so the challenge was to capture that in every dish. What we could do was, for example, make a broth from the mushrooms. We could dry mushrooms, we could smoke mushrooms. So we tried to put all of that together into one dish.
Det blir ju väldigt konkret när man ser gamla kläder bli fina måltider på en tallrik.
Coming from a completely different story and coming back here in our plates, that is really something amazing.
In our bigger vision, we somehow want to create this positive company that just contributes to the world rather than taking it from it.
Okay, thank you. Right. So the idea here was to try to show that if you design things in a circular way, it doesn't just have to become trash at the end and you throw it away and feel bad about it. Nobody wins. But that it can actually be something that's pretty beautiful or fun. Of course, there's a lot of things to do with clothes besides composting them and growing food, but it's one thing that you can do if you design them the right way. And this is a little technical, but I just wanted to show you. It's a diagram that shows the theory of how we can have natural cycles and also technological cycles. Because we don't only use natural materials. Sometimes synthetics are really good because they can fill a purpose that synthetics doesn't really do. But then you need to think about it in a different way. So this is from Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which I can really recommend. Just Google it if you're interested in circular economy, and then you can read up on it. Right. So now we've talked about it from a more maybe theoretical standpoint, and now I wanted to show you how we think when we design our garments. To start off with, design your product right from the start, because it's very hard to change it later. This was a pen that the American authorities made in a campaign to try to get kids to not use drugs so much. But they didn't think it all the way through. And I think it's the same way if you design a piece of clothing, that you have to think about it further than just when it's sold. Because sometimes the use phase or the end of life phase is just as important. So this is our designer's checklist. And this is our way to make sure that we do our job and that we do it the right way. Does this product deserve existence? Will it last long enough? Is it versatile enough? Will it age with beauty? Nothing added that isn't needed, right? Will it be easy to repair? Is it durable enough? And last but not least, doesn't have an end-of-life solution. So I'm going to go through these. This is the design studio in Houdini in Stockholm. It's not very glamorous, but that's what it looks like. And it's important to just, because a lot of the times, at least in the clothing industry, you look at a design and the question is, can we sell this? And that's a really bad way to start if you want to design good things. So instead we try to look at it and say, what does it do? Like, does it add something to the market? Does it have a better function, or is it more sustainable? That's something that already exists. Does it have a purpose? And if it doesn't have a purpose, then we don't do it. Of course, we also need to ask the question, can we sell it? Because if nobody wants it, then it doesn't have a purpose at all. But you don't want to start in that direction. Will it last long enough in terms of quality, functionality, and style? Right now, our industry is dominated by fast fashion. And with fast fashion, the whole idea is to make attractive things that are disposable. So they're made to not last. That's the whole idea. And as much as we can, we try to be a counterweight to that. Because even if you do something in a circular, in terms of materials, if the circular just spins faster and faster all the time, it's still no good. So we try to do it in a circular way and then make the circle run as slowly as possible. Then you can really have an impact. Is it versatile enough? If we design a jacket for skiing, like, you got to be able to ride a mountain bike in it too. Because if somebody says that you can't, it's just a way to sell more shit. So that's also an important thing, to not just design something that's made for a specific purpose when it can have much more purposes. Will it age with beauty or become outdated? If you look at Houdini garments, they're usually very plain or minimalistic. And that's not just a coincidence. It's also because minimalistic things, it takes longer to get tired of them. It's also because we're Scandinavian, but this is also part of it. So as long as it's possible, you try to avoid stuff that's too trendy. Nothing added that isn't needed, right? So that means, at least in the sports business, it's sort of common practice to just add a lot of stuff on garments to make them look technical. The whole bells and whistles idea. And usually when a garment breaks down or when a garment feels outdated, it's because of those things. So just get rid of that. And then will it be easy to repair? And that can be stuff as small as a puller on a cord. Because on a garment, if sometimes you build them into the garment, and if it breaks, then you have to cut open the whole garment to replace it. So to think about those little details and make sure that they can be replaced. Also, again, to sort of slow down the circle, to prolong the life of all the clothing. Is it durable enough? This sort of doesn't need an explanation. But since we do garments that are used in sort of harsh environments, it's very important that they are just strong enough. So it takes a lot of testing and a lot of time before we can launch something to make sure it really lasts. And of course, last but not least, an end-of-life solution. So that could mean if it's a synthetic garment, that it can be recycled, and if it's a natural garment, that you haven't added stuff into it that makes it impossible to recycle. Because a lot of the time, at least in the textile industry, you mix cotton with elastane or you mix polyester with wool. And sometimes it has a purpose for the functionality, but a lot of the times it's just to, for example, wool is an expensive material, so then you add some cheap polyester just to increase the margins. But then it just becomes waste when you're done with it. Care for your friends. That was all for the checklist, but this is sort of connected to it. And we try to bring back the lost art of garment care. This is something that our grandparents knew a lot about, but I feel like today it's so cheap to just replace something. So if a bottom pops off a shirt, it's like, yeah, I don't know, I'll just buy a new one. And that's something we need to move away from. So we try to, as much as we can, promote garment care and to help our customers learn to take care for their garments. Right. So to sum up the design philosophy, make things circular, make them last long, and then, of course, last but not least, make sure the production has as low impact as possible. And I will get back to that in a little while. Right. So now, as long as designing better garments can make a huge difference, no question about it. But something, if we look further ahead, is to also question how we buy and how we sell products. And this is something that we've been sort of piloting for a few years now. In 2012, we started renting out garments. And this image is from a hotel in a Swedish ski resort. Because it makes sense. If you go up to a ski resort, you rent your hotel room. Maybe you rent your skis, you rent your boots. Why not rent the clothes as well? And it's an interesting concept where, besides from that you don't necessarily have to own more, it also has a decoupling effect where economic growth is not necessarily dependent on using more resources. So we can get more customers without necessarily making more garments. And then this is the next level rental, which is something we did a pilot on with 100 people in Stockholm last winter. A subscription system. And then the idea is that we have a library of clothing. And instead of buying garments one at a time, you instead get access to the whole collection for a monthly fee. So we have, when we did it, we had 3 different packages tailored to different customers. And then they paid a fee. And then they had 4 or 5 garments at home, and then they could replace them whenever they wanted to. Because the whole idea, if you have a shell jacket that you might use for skiing, it doesn't do any good when it sits in your closet. You want it when you're on your skis. And I think this is something that could be really interesting looking forward. It's still a small part of our business, but it's something that has a lot of potential. Oh, and something else that I should add is that on a system level, it sort of flips a lot of things upside down as well. Because when we look at a garment, if we own it, then it becomes more profitable the longer it lasts, instead of it becomes more profitable if it breaks and somebody needs to buy something new. And also, since we own it, when it's worn out, then we're responsible for recycling it. So it's sort of, on a system level, it has a lot of pros to it. Our reuse program, this is something that we do in our own shops. And that lets customers buy and sell Houdini products in our store, used Houdini products. So they bring them in, we sell them for them, and then we share the profit. Which is a great way for somebody that has a garment that's lying around. And then they, instead of, so they can come to us and we can help them sell it. And it gets a longer life. Right, so the last thing I want to talk about is to measure sustainability. And this is a whole jungle, and we could talk for this for hours, but I'm not going to do that. I think the main point I want to make is you need to look at it from a holistic perspective. You cannot look only at climate change or only at chemical use or only at water consumption. This is the model that we use. It's called the Planetary Boundaries Framework, and it's developed by the Stockholm Resilience Center, which is connected to the Stockholm University. And the whole idea, I don't know if you can see it, but it says climate change, novel entities. Novel entities is stuff that we put in nature that doesn't belong in nature. So a lot of chemicals, for example. Ocean acidification, freshwater use, land system change, biosphere integrity, that's biological, what's it called? Well, whatever. Okay, so, but the whole idea is to get a holistic perspective. So not just measure one thing, because clothing production is so complex. So you need to look at a lot of different things. And if you want to read about how we did this, there's a report that we released last year that's called the Planetary Boundaries Assessment. I'm not going to go through it because it's 70 pages, but it's a good read if you are interested in this. So it's one part that's about our sustainability strategies, and there's one part that's more academic with all the numbers and figures and references and all that. You can find it on houdinisportswear.com under sustainability. Right, so this is a number that I'm very proud of. All of the fabrics we use this fall and winter for the first time is 100% what we consider in one way or another sustainable. Recycled, recyclable, renewable, biodegradable, or Blue Sign certified. Blue Sign is a third party that checks the production process of a fabric to make sure it's sustainable. And sometimes we need to make some hard decisions. Because, for example, you won't find any swimwear in the Houdini collection right now. And we used to have, and they were pretty popular. But we thought the materials we used, we couldn't find the good replacement that was sustainable enough and that had good enough quality. So we stopped selling swimwear for now. And then we'll start selling swimwear again when we find a good enough fabric. And the big goal right now for us is this. The current fall and winter collection that you can see now is 63% fully circular. That means for synthetic garments that it's made from recycled and recyclable fibers, or if it's a natural garment, well, we don't mix it with something else, so it's purely natural, as you saw in the film. Next winter, it's 72%, and the goal is 100% in 2022. But then, of course, you might ask, why is it not 100% already? And the reason is that it's hard, because this whole idea is very new to the textile industry, and we're dependent on the people that make the fabrics to also care about this. And it's still a very small piece of the whole textile industry that think in these ways. So we work on it as hard as we can, and soon we're getting there. But it's not easy, especially when you don't want to compromise on because replacing a very good fabric that lasts forever with a bad one that breaks in a year, even if it's circular, it doesn't really do anybody a favor. So it's a balance always. Just to sum up, what this means is that there's nobody at Houdini that's responsible. There's no one person that's a sustainability manager. There's no department that works with sustainability. Everybody needs to feel that they're responsible for it, because otherwise you just end up with a lot of conflicts, where somebody from the sustainability department is arguing with somebody at the sales departments, and then everybody gets mad at each other, and you sort of don't get the whole energy forwards. So this is something that's good if you want to start a company. And of course, we can't do it alone. So we need to ask people for help. And if somebody comes with us to ask how we do things, we share it, of course. There's no patents when it comes to sustainability. That's just stupid. And if you want to touch and feel the Houdini garments, this is the place to go in Prague. We still don't have the garments in the store. They're on the website, and hopefully they're in the store pretty soon. So I think if that's all I have to say in the presentation, but if anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them. We can do it here, or you could ask me afterwards. But it would be very nice to have a bit of a conversation if anybody wants to stick around.
Definitely. Axel, thank you.
Yep.
I'm turned off again. Now it's working. Okay,
All right.
great. Axel, again, thank you so much. It was really
Thank
super
you.
interesting. And exactly as Axel has mentioned, you can ask us anything, also me or him, whatever interests you. So feel free to ask us.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So does anybody have a question now that you want to share? All right. It's Sunday night. It's understandable. It's fine.
Everybody's tired.
Yes.
But maybe some recommendation. If you haven't seen our booth at Open Studio yet, you can go there because you'll see the composting process of Houdini garments live. So it might be a good recommendation. If you want to buy it right now as well, you can go to our store as well, and it's there.
Yes.
In the sustainable pop-up.
Okay, awesome.
So feel free.
Yeah. And I'll be sticking around for a little while, or you could
Me
send
too.
me an email. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you for coming.